hear me down here. Maybe this is better. And I am focused on driving. I'm just going to do this here. And the submarine thing, to me, has all the hallmarks of a sort of a fake operation. Not that it didn't happen. Not that, something didn't happen or that these people didn't potentially die. But the way it was blown out of proportion. And I always wonder, why is something being reported so strongly in the media, so heavily? Right? Why is everybody talking about it? What's such a big deal? And then, of course, you learn, or you're reminded actually of, the whole Titanic story that so many of you know about, that might not be exactly what we were told it is. Like everything else, there's a huge theory out there that a few powerful people were killed on a Titanic, or maybe even the sister ship of the Titanic, in order to pave the way for the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, is that something that is far-fetched? Maybe, but so let's look at what happened a few months ago in Turkey. You had Erdogan, who was heavily opposed to Finland and Sweden joining NATO. Remember? So Erdogan wasn't going to go along with that. And expand NATO to Russia's borders. So what happened was you had a horrible, horrible earthquake that probably killed 170,000 people in Turkey and Syria. And a few weeks later, Erdogan comes out and says, okay, Finland's okay, we're gonna do Finland and we're gonna allow it into NATO. Now, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying these are very weird circumstances. And I said on the day of the earthquake, I said, hey, if Erdogan comes out in the next weeks and actually supports Finland joining NATO, then this was not an earthquake. Do I have proof? Well, there's certain things pointing to it. But with the submarine thing, the interesting thing is, who's connected to that company, OceanGate, who's on the board, who's the CEO, what are these bigger connections, what is it pointing to? So it's no coincidence. It's also blown way out of proportions to just be a horrible accident. When something is blown out of proportion, it's either because there's an interest in blowing it out of proportion, and usually it is to distract people from something else. That's a common thing, right? That you would distract people from something else. With the Wagner group, that story to me is crazy. It's crazy because this is a mercenary army, and most people don't even know these exist, but they exist in America, they exist in almost every country, which means that these are private armies. That, yeah, they're often subsidized by the government through various means, or the intelligence community, yes, of course, but they are technically private armies that are out there for hire. So, first of all, the Wagner Group now being so prominently featured in the media brings people to a realization, wait, mercenary armies, what is that? And they learn about those things, right? And they look at these things. I don't buy this story for one moment. I don't buy the story for one moment that they just came out of nowhere. They advanced from the sea, into the inland of Russia. If this was a legitimate operation, if this was a legitimate feud between the Wagner army and the Russian government, they would have annihilated them. That was my initial reaction. No, people don't understand how powerful the Russian army is. So it's like a cat and mouse game. And the point is, we cannot really figure out what the real objective is, because there are so many parties that are interested and that have an interest in this whole story, and they want it their way. So rather than trying to figure out who exactly is doing what and to what end, pick up the piece that really speaks to you, because in every story there's something for us personally to pick up. For me, it is this whole submarine, the Wagner group, and everything is showing me It's reminding me of Wag the Dog, how these stories are fabricated at a certain time for a certain purpose. And in Wag the Dog, right? Remember that movie with Robert De Niro that basically showed how in order to distract from a White House scandal and the president, I think in that movie the president was actually, in a coma or something, or was it an affair or whatever it was, but at any point they invented a war in Albania. And they invented a whole story, and they invented the myths. And this is really where the Wagner story and the Submarine story, right? You have these prominent people that are featured and their life stories, and then at Wagner you have this former ally of Vladimir Putin's that all of a sudden is turned into the villain here, and he's actually supporting Ukraine, and now he's going to Moscow, and these are the kind of fictitious Hollywood stories that these people write. They're screenwriters for a fake reality, in my view. That's just all my opinion, right? They're screenwriting a fake reality. They're using so often AI to fill in the blanks, and they keep us distracted, right? They keep us sort of, never really able to catch our breath, because this is happening, that's happening, and that's happening. Meanwhile, what is happening domestically? Meanwhile, you had a almost impeachment of Biden going through the House, almost. Meanwhile, you had the Hunter Biden thing. Meanwhile, you're having these recordings that show up and clearly show that the fake resident was involved in his son's illegal and treasonous dealings. You have all these things. But of course, now it's all Russia, Wagner Group, Moscow, Ukraine, offensive, feud. Will Putin die? Did he flee Moscow? And that's, it's kind of, it's the magic trick where one hand does the magic trick and the other hand is causing the distraction. It's like, look here, look here. For me, personally, the main message that we're getting through these times is that people really need to apply their influence where they have it. That's in their personal sphere. Clean up your act, look at what you can do with what you have right now. If that's planting a few seeds, literally, do it. If that's finally starting your garden, which you've been putting off, do it. If that's creating more community in your community, do it. The only way that because these people, the media and these power hungry people that so desperately want to push through their thing, they are using your attention, my attention, our energy, to bring it about. And we can only withdraw our energy when we have an alternative. Right now, most people still rely on this system in one way or another. But once we really step back and move back and pull back our attention from there and go, okay, this is all horrible. It's all going to shit. But what can I do about Russia right now? Pretty much nothing. But what can I do in my own sphere right now? Well, a lot. So let me think about what I can do in my sphere today. And that's what we need to do. That's what self-reliance really means. And the more people that put their attention on their own little communities, on what is happening within their lives, on improving that part, this old guard and this old system will start to crumble right in front of our eyes, because nothing can sustain itself without energy. I'm not saying don't pay no attention to it. I'm not saying don't be vigilant, but not more than necessary. And these stories, let me give you the submarine example. The backstory, who's involved, who these people are, the Rothschilds and all that is interesting for people because you can make certain connections. But does it matter in your life if 5 strangers you've never heard about went on a submarine? Okay, they were going to the Titanic, but okay, it was a horrible accident. If it happened the way they said it happened, I'm really sorry to hear that. But how does days and days and days of putting your attention there change anything or help anything for the better? It really doesn't, right? It really doesn't do anything, because 5 people somewhere in the world die all the time. There was a horrific attack on a Christian school, I believe in Tanzania, last week or the week before. I believe over 60 children were horrifically slaughtered. Did you hear about that? Did you see that all over the news? 60 some children, 60, I don't know, 64 children that were in a Christian school, and they were slaughtered apparently because they were in a Christian school. Did you hear about that? No. Shouldn't that have been all over the news? Shouldn't that have been blown up to show people that horrific things are happening, if that's what the news media want us to know about, right? So no. Instead of that, we keep hearing about a submarine. The Wagner group thing, however, the only thing that I will say to that whole Russia and Ukraine situation, what it is showing, what the media wants to portray is, it's zero peace talks, right? The media doesn't want, in this, they want this conflict to go on because whoever's sponsoring the media is doing really well off a war. So the one thing that we can take away from the whole talk about this war, Russia, Ukraine, this conflict, is there is no one right now in the political sphere that is active in politics that is really calling for peace in a significant way. In a way, and saying, no, we're going to put the hammer down on this, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk it out, we're going to figure this out, because we know they don't want that peace. We know they don't want it. It's bad for business, it's bad for the Great Reset crowd, it's bad for the Agenda 2030 crowd, for the WEF crowd. It's bad for everyone if there's peace. They want that war, they want that conflict. And they will rebuild Ukraine as a role model for the Agenda 2030. For this new, this dystopian timeline that they want. So that's a significant part of it. I don't understand why people don't see through that, and why they don't see through these media war hawks, these apparently so tolerant, peaceful people that are all about love, the summer of love 2020, bombing American cities, you know, and going on these crazy rides, and it's the summer of love. But as soon as it comes to that war, send more weapons, kill more Russians, just go at it, right? It's not that. It's all theatrics, and they want people to be invested in that emotionally, and they want people to continually pick a side. Guess what? I side with the Russian people, I side with the Ukrainian people, I side with the North Korean people, I side with the Chinese people, the Lao Beijing. I side with my fellow brothers and sisters all over the world, because we're being played by a very tiny, small group of people every day that keep us divided so they can play their game. And that's the game. That's the whole game. So if we can see through that, and if we can rebuild families, communities, and really step up our game where we are, then these things will begin to crumble on a level like never before. That's the key takeaway for me. So just wanted to come on and share this with you all. And also thank you all for watching yesterday the interview with Frank Jacob, or the Q&A Truth Marathon. 2 hours with Frank Jacob. Was an amazing conversation, amazing insight, and Frank Jacob made a great announcement yesterday. His new webinar, The Inner Looking Glass, is dropping July 14th, and he is actually giving our beautiful viewers here a 50% off coupon code for the first part of the webinar if you get it by July 1st. And I'm gonna share the information right away in the comments after I go off. It'll be in the comments right away. And I encourage you to take up this offer, because his webinars are amazing, his videos are amazing. So you can get it for 50% off. We'll put the coupon code here. Check it out. If it speaks to you, go do it. Until July 1st, it's 50%